Carmen, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to speak with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat and just kind of see where this goes.
Yeah, me too. Like I was saying a minute ago, kind of off recording, when I came across you, I was really intrigued because of kind of the crossover in our work at the end of life, and specifically with the doula collective that I'm involved with here in Seattle. We focus primarily on marginalized groups and making sure that they have sovereignty through the end of their life. And so often the paperwork we do, I mean, for any of us, but definitely if you have any special needs or you're part of the LGBTQ community, and in some other cases as well, paperwork is instrumental to making sure that you have the death and the post-death that you want. And so when I read about you and the work that you do with women specifically throughout our lives to empower our sovereignty, I was really captivated. So I'm excited to hear about that today. And I would love for you to kind of describe your background, kind of what you do and how you got there.
Yeah, so I'm an attorney. I do estate planning kind of like by day. And I'm also, I guess, what I would call like a women's empowerment coach, on the side, but it's also highly tied into my work. And I do have two businesses that I run. And I was one of, it's funny because people ask, did you always want to be a lawyer? And the answer is no. Like majored in anthropology, got to college and was like, oh, in college, and I was getting into my junior year, and apparently we're supposed to do this thing called like a job search or figure out like what we're doing after
Oh,
college.
right, sure.
And I was like, anthropology, like I was fascinated, right? Like just other cultures and just how they function versus like us in the US or like more American, right? And I was like, okay, well, my options are go get a PhD and become a professor. That seems so boring to me. Or go and do like archaeology, and I would be like under the burning sun and doing digs. And I was like, that's not fun because we actually had to do some as part of our class.
Oh, wow.
Because I digress, but I went to Santa Clara University, and it was on like the ruins of like Native Americans. And so we did digs like within the campus, approved, of course, right? Everything was like permitted and all of that. But I was like, I don't want to do this as part of my career. And so I was like, well, what do I do? And we just so happened to have a law and society emphasis where we compared like tribal systems in New Zealand to the US legal system,
Oh.
completely different function. And I was like, oh, well, why don't I just go to law school? Right. I was the first in my family to go to college. And I was like, well, law school can't be that bad. We have no attorneys in our family. I don't like, I think I knew one attorney from like, that was in retirement while growing up. And so I went to law school and tried to drop out twice because I was just like, this is boring. This is not what I was meant to do. This is not why I was placed on this earth. But every time I came back to it. Right. And I was like, okay, maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. And it just so happened that when I was waiting for bar results, my grandmother passed away.
Mm.
And she had, attempted to do it yourself estate planning, which is great, better than, nothing. But it wasn't set up the right way. And so as I was helping my mom navigate her emotions from losing her mom,
Mm.
um, I was navigating the legal system for them because I knew like what we call, legalese, which is the legal language and like the things that actually were going to happen based on the documents that they had in place. And I had planned to go into estate planning for different reasons, right? I was like, I'm going to just go and work with all the rich people and we're going to make so much money, right? Um, and but my primary focus was going to be family law. I was going to do divorce and custody, and in part of that, right, going back to, and I think these were all steps that I had to take, right? I had to go this route. I had to stay in law school because when I was in law school, I worked for a nonprofit called the Pro Bono Project in San Jose or in the Silicon Valley. And they helped with restraining orders and family custody issues. But they were mostly Spanish speaking women or women who had chosen to be stay at home moms, and their husbands were the breadwinners. And when their husbands decided they no longer wanted to be married, they froze the bank accounts. The women had nothing, no money. So we prepared documents for these low income, whether or not they were actually low income because their spouses had money,
Mm.
but they themselves were considered low income. And so we helped them prepare documents. And so I was determined when I went into family law that those were the people I was going to help, right? it's very hard to pay your bills when they have no money to pay you. And so I went into private practice family law, and needless to say, I got out of that. And so my grandmother's passing pushed me further into estate planning. And I was like, I need to do this. I can't imagine my mom going through this and not having somebody to guide her through the legal system. Because I was still trying to figure it out, and I had a law degree. And so I ended up in estate planning and started my own practice. As soon as I passed the bar exam, I knew that I was not going to go work for somebody else. I had worked for a corporate law firm as well. So part of my law school story is I worked full time and went to school at night.
Mm.
So I worked for a large corporation, and I knew that if I ever wanted a family, I would not be working in big law because I would never see them. I would, I don't know when I would see my child. And so I was like, I'm not doing that. So I decided early on that I would be, starting my own practice. So I started my practice and realized shortly after probably about 6 months that I hated family law and private practice, that the people that I really wanted to help weren't there. They were back at the nonprofit. And I decided, you know what, estate planning seems to be where I can make the biggest impact, because so many people who, there's like women, right? And then people of color who
Mhm.
just don't know about this. And, at the time, so I've been practicing law on my own about 9 years, but I've been worked with, been doing estate planning and working with other attorneys for about 11. And in my time there, it was just kind of the awakening of the woman and her relationship to finances, right? And realizing that she needed to focus on that. And so I was really intrigued by that. And I was like, how do I help more women? And then while also navigating, being a newly barred attorney and creating documents, right? Because estate planning is transactional for the most part, unless you have probate, which you clearly didn't do your estate plan. And so I was like, I don't. And it was funny, for a long time, like my slogan or my motto was, nobody wants to talk about dying. So let's talk about living. And I
Mm.
just had this call where this urge to help people beyond documents. I was like, how do they help them live the lives they really want to live um, before they pass away? Right. Like how, and so I was coming up to 30. I said, hey, this is 30. This is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. Doesn't seem fun, right? These documents, it just is meh. And I said, give me a sign. So, whoever, whether it's, God, spirit, creator, however you identify, I said, give me a sign, this divine energy that is there. Tell me what is the next step for my life. And 6 months pregnant. I mean, 6 months later, I found out I was pregnant. Was not the plan, because I was like, I just started my business. Like that wasn't the sign I was looking for, but it was what I needed. And that actually prompted me, right? Because, as you're getting closer to delivering, they say, hey, do you have a advanced healthcare directive? And I was like, actually, I do. Because, if I didn't, right, doing that work, and I will be honest, right, I actually didn't do my estate plan until I found out I was pregnant, because I was like, oh, I have this human, like, and then my immediate thought was, what if I die while giving birth?
Mhm.
And I went on this whole spiritual personal development journey about, what will people tell my daughter about me, right? Yes, okay, that's great. She was the first person in her family to go to college. Yes, she's the only attorney. But then I was like, well, what is there beyond my degrees, right? Beyond like my career. And so I really was like, okay, we need to get out of this relationship with her father. And I was like, this was unhealthy. We were 10 years in, but it was like, that's what I was supposed to do, right? I had checked the boxes, graduated, started a business, was in a long-term relationship. We were supposed to get married, have a baby, all the boxes that you check throughout your life. And I was like, I am not happy. A whole lot needs to change. And so I wouldn't say that I flipped my life upside down, but before my daughter was born, I set the intention to make it a life that I would be proud of her to, one, know me as living, and two, if she had been living the same life as me, what would I say to her? What would I change for her? Because I think so much about how women, as women, we tend to be nurturers. We just go, we're people pleasers. We just go with it. And there's so many parts of us that of ourselves that get suppressed, and we don't fully express it because we're supposed to, um, and so then in 2016, my daughter was born in 2015, 2016, her father and I split. There were previous issues of domestic violence. And 2016 was kind of that, like, we're done. We're
Mm.
like, I'm no more. And she was one. So I was like, okay, feel like I still protected her enough, right? If we, and I don't know what your thoughts are on energy and things like that, but I
I'm
was
into
like, all
it.
right,
I'm here for it.
okay. I was like, and I was like, I know all about, like womb healing and things like
Yep.
that. So I did my best to almost protect her, right? But I know the things that I go through, like I will have to do some healing with her as
Mhm.
she grows, right? But I know that now that I'm aware of it, we're able to, focus on that. And so that she doesn't get to 30 and she's like, what am I doing in this crappy relationship? And, and not dealing with like, so we'll start now. Um, so we split in, I want to say July, and then in October I had this just like empower yourself, right? And I was like, I want to empower myself. I want other women to be able to empower themselves, to have the financial tools, the legal tools to remove themselves from toxic relationships if necessary. And so I started Empower Yourself in 2016, not having any idea like where it was going, what I was doing with it. And I still was running my law practice, so I was still doing estate planning and all of that. And now we're here, and estate planning is essentially, we do coaching, we offer legal advice, financial tools, and it's still that has that same mission, right? To empower, to teach women, I should say, to teach women how to empower themselves. Like we'll give you these tools so you can go out and do it on your own without relying on a man, essentially. Because there's still so many people, there's so many women, I should say, who still rely on either a man, a father figure, male figure, the masculine energy to
Mhm.
decide for them. And so that's where we are with Empower Yourself. And then I have my law practice, and here I am.
Wow. Wow. That is what a journey. And, in my own personal development work, I talk a lot about rewriting that life prescription, all of those things that you're told you have to be, or the little boxes that that you feel you fit into or are put into. And you have just, in this last like 5 minutes, you you rewrote your life prescription in its entirety. So like kudos to you. And I think it's really so endearing what you said earlier about being the first to go to college in your family, but then being like, oh, I'll just go to law school. It's no big deal. It's law school, but no big
Well,
deal.
and I will say law school was one of those things that was so challenging, right? But yeah, it was, I was one of those people, like even now when they're like, what do you do as a hobby? I'm like, I read. Like school
Right.
just came naturally to me. So I was like, oh, law school, no problem.
That's amazing. Have you done any human design?
So I have, and it's actually fascinating because my friends, jokingly, they will call me the chaos coordinator, and I was like, oh yeah, yeah, I solve problems, right? But I'm a generator. I don't like know too much into it, but it's basically like, oh, you give me a problem, and I will give you a solution, right?
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
I'm a generator.
That's what I was gonna guess. I'm a manifesting generator,
Oh,
so I kind of like go toward what lights me up, and then I start a bunch of things, and then I go to the next thing, and I kind of leave those things, and then other people take them from there.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
that
so
that makes well, and that's important, I think, for just generators in general, right? Is that it lights you up. And so in the 9 years that I've been practicing, I've had that up and down. Am I just going to go full on coaching? Do I not like the law? And so I've stayed with them because it's like, as I set the intention or ask the universe, hey, give me some guidance, something will come up in both areas. And I was like, "Well, we're just going to stick with the fact that we're doing both, and we're going to respond to these issues and solution and come up with solutions as necessary."
yeah, I love that. So when I was in high school, so super impressionable age, right? My grandfather died, and I remember vividly hearing from my mom that my grandma had no idea what the financials were, didn't know where the paperwork was, had no idea who the mortgage was through,
Mm.
not one clue. It had never been covered with her, even though my grandpa had a lengthy illness and at any time in those months could have taken her through all of that.
Mhm.
And I think that's becoming less and less common with future generations, but it's still very present. So, the work that you offer to people in order to empower themselves is just so powerful.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And yeah, you're absolutely correct. The number of women, especially my first estate planning clients, right, would come in And and you know what I love is that I've also had women come in who are like, my husband is superstitious. He doesn't want to do these documents. Can you help me at least
Mhm.
protect my interest? And
Mm.
we do it, and we get their, estate plans done, and their husbands never come in. But we, their women are taking more of the initiative now. And I think they're understanding, and women tend to live longer. Statistically, women are living longer. And I think that that's why there's this movement now where women are understanding we need to take control of our finances. We need to understand where money is going, right? And just our society as a whole, where men always dominated, right? I mean, if we go back to like the founding fathers and the premises on which this country was built, um, it was male dominated. And and I talk about how estate planning wasn't meant for women. It wasn't meant for people of color. It wasn't, unless you were a white male landowner, estate planning was not for you. But now, in 2021, it is needed for, if you're over the age of 18, everybody needs some type of estate plan in place. But yeah, and I love that it's becoming less common that women don't know where their finances are. And it depends too, right, on like the age of the individuals. And yeah.
Sure. Generally, generationally speaking, for sure.
Mhm.
Um, I also really love when I talk to people about that paperwork. It is definitely a sensitive topic because of the way that we generally shy away from death in this country specifically.
Mhm.
And we don't have conversations or comfort level about it. So then everything else wrapped up in the topic becomes awkward and difficult. But when I talk to people, sometimes when I talk about how much easier having the right paperwork in place will be for the folks who are left behind, kids, partners, community, whatever it is, that's usually when the light bulb goes off and people are like, oh, okay, so I'm doing this as much for the people I'm leaving behind as I am for myself. And that is one of the most beautiful gifts that people can give the people that are left behind.
I always say estate planning is a selfless act, right? Because it's not for
Mhm.
you. You're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the people that will be mourning or celebrating, right? Whatever approach you take to the passing or the physical passing, right, of someone. Um, they will be, rather than having to deal with like the intricacies of the legal system, they will have documents already in place, right? Or if we're looking at someone who is in the hospital, right, and is on life support, or is on the verge of passing, making sure that their wishes are carried out, but also that the people that need to make those decisions know what's wanted, right? Because sometimes that's where like family battles happen, because somebody wants to keep them on life support, or somebody wants to let them go, or someone wants to cremate them or bury them. And these conflicts arise, right? And that's the last thing that the individual, I'm sure, intended. And so by having these legal documents in place, you're doing us, you're giving not only yourself, but your loved ones a peace of mind, so they know which way to go when you
Yeah.
pass, or so that they can celebrate you rather than having conflicts over whether or not to actually pull the plug.
Right. It is really such a gift. It allows people also to get into the business of grieving and mourning,
Mhm.
which is what their work is in that time.
Yeah.
I love what you said earlier too about just thinking about, okay, what is the life that I want to live so that so that my daughter basically feels good about the life that I'm living, and I'm modeling that for her. And I heard something similar put another way the other day that I really loved too, that resonated. And it was, somebody was talking to me about their spiritual journey, and they said that they've really started considering what kind of ancestor they want to be and embodying
Mm.
that now. And it had a total like full
Oh, I
body.
have so like my goose. Oh my goodness, I love that. Yeah, and it's such a beautiful, like just a beautiful like idea, right? Or thought, because Paulo Coelho is one of my favorite authors,
Me too.
and and I'm reading. I forget what book it is right now, but I sat down and wept by the River Piedra or
Oh,
something like that. The
yeah.
Alchemist is probably my favorite, but I'm reading that one right now because it was recommended by somebody I know. And it's just and not to say that that has anything to do with the ancestors, but for whatever reason it popped up. And even in the Alchemist, right, is like alchemizing, if that was the right word, right, but transforming energy and our lives so that we're producing something that we're proud of. Because when we pass, and if we are present depending on what everyone believes, but if you are, watching over,
Yeah.
and knowing that, I just am thinking about like, so when you asked or you said, right, I want to start being that ancestor. Like, I
Mhm.
just envision this like powerful being that I'm like, they're going to be like, she was a maverick, right? She broke all the rules. And I was like, I'm not doing enough yet. Like, that was just the quick little like conversation that just went on in my head. But I think that that's absolutely beautiful, right? And it's, whether it's, what is your story going to be versus, you know, who is the, or what is, what type of ancestor do you want to be? I think that that's just absolutely beautiful.
I love how it just spurs you to think like, wait, am I being enough of myself? I should be more, because what you said earlier, as women, we are often taking the back seat. We're people pleasing. We're just trying to blend in so that we don't cause a ruckus. When really what we need to be doing is being more of ourselves and giving our amazing energy and feminine flow to the world.
Yes. And it's funny because I was getting ready to do a Facebook post early on. Like, I just had this like moment because I was talking to a business coach of mine and she was like, "What's the deal with the hoops?" I was like, "Excuse me?" And she was like, "Why, like, why hoops? Like, you have hoops on everything." Like, and I was like, "Well, I wear them every day." And she was like, "No, like, what's beyond?" I said, "Well, to be honest with you, when I was in high school, I, um, I went to a very affluent high school, was one of the scholarship kids, right? I don't remember if affirmative action was still a thing, but I was considered like an affirmative action kid, right? Was there on scholarship. I studied my butt off. If I didn't get good grades, right, like they'd kick me out and my parents were not going to be able to afford it. So I think I was there on scholarship and we had financial aid. And so when I was getting ready and we do like the beginning of the school year shopping, right? I'm 13 and my dad was like, "You're going to this school in this rich, white affluent area. You have to dress differently. You have to be different." So I remember because we used to go to the flea market and I would wear like baggy jeans and hooded sweatshirts and hoops and I would have my hair slicked back and I'm Mexican, like that's what we do, and I remember him taking me shopping and I want to say we went to Abercrombie and Fitch and some other stores and I was like, "What are these clothes? Like, this is not." And he was like, "You have to blend in, you have to, like make yourself fit in." So I did, right? We bought a bunch of like new clothes and I remember going like I had this cardigan and this skirt and I was just like, "Oh, this feels so uncomfortable, like this is not who I am." And then um I was able to slowly get out of that, right? Because I had my little group of minorities, we call ourselves. There was probably 10 of us in a school of 400.
Yeah.
And we all sat together at lunch, whether you were a freshman or a senior, we were in a group. And then when I went to college, so I was able to kind of like ease back into who I am without, the first impression. So then when I went to college and I decided then that I was going to law school, our one lawyer friend, right? I had my nose pierced. I had cartilage piercings here. I think I had already gotten my first two tattoos, which one is on my shoulder, right? And then I had my lower back one that I got when I was 17. Um, and so I remember being there and, we sat down with the one lawyer friend that my aunt knew or something. And she's like, "Oh, I heard you're going to law school." She's like, "You have to get rid of all of that." And I was like, "All of what?" So I had a nose ring, a tongue ring, cartilage piercings. Um, I'm only double pierced, I think, in my lobes. And I was like, "Oh, okay." Took everything out. But at that moment, right, I was in college already. And so I was like, this doesn't feel good, but like, you're the first to go to law school. Don't set the wrong impression. Don't give people the wrong impression. So I
Mm.
changed all of that. And then when I got there, I was like, screw this. Like, I think I went out. Did I get another tattoo? No, I didn't get another tattoo until I was like already an attorney. Right. So I was still kind of battling that through law school. And then, um, when did I get so I don't have, as many beautiful tattoos as you do, right? But so in 2016, I got my first really visible tattoo. So like no matter what I would wear, people would see it. And I remember, and it says, "I came, I lived, I loved," right? In Latin. So not "I conquered," but I loved because it was after the birth of my daughter. And I was like, I want something that like, if I thought about that, like if I had died, or if I die tomorrow, I want her to know, the symbolism behind my tattoo that I came and I loved her. And so um since then, I mean, I have not big ones, right? But and then I have a tattoo here, but I got to that point where I was like, and it's 37 years, right? I'll be 38 this year, but it's 37 years of culture and society telling us what not to do or how to be, that even I have moments where I'm like, I'm still a watered down version of myself. Like the
Yeah.
most authentic is like this fire blazing woman that's like, nothing will stop her. Nobody will tell her anything. And so I do have moments still where I'm still watered down. Like I can be more me, and it's a ever evolving process.
Yeah, I mean, just the system and the way that we white people up is also just, I mean, it makes me so sad to hear that. And also, like, I get it. Um, I had an interesting, well, so also on the note of fashion. So I could not be whiter. And I also would walk into Abercrombie and be like, what are these clothes? Because nothing fit me. I don't know who they were made for, but um, and also, your style from back in the day is now back. And
It is.
I work for a fashion brand now, and we have a whole capsule of that coming for the fall. So I'm super excited about it.
Yeah.
But gosh, just the way that society and community and just family and different folks try to take the you out of you. Anything that we can do that bucks the system on that is so powerful. I
Mhm.
had a Zoom call the other day with somebody that I hadn't met at our parent company. And she got on the Zoom and she said, and she was new to the company. She said, "Oh, you have all those tattoos. I didn't know we could do that." I was like, I didn't ask. This is just my arms. But even to see with her that, she was nervous about being her
Mhm.
truly embodied self.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I have moments even now with my estate planning clients, right, where, they'll kind of look and I can see that they're looking, at my tattoos if I'm wearing a short sleeve or up here. And I'm like, oh, what are they looking at? And then I'm like, I forget, right, that it's here. And at first I'd be like, oh, I need to make sure that I wear like a shirt that covers it a little bit. And I was like, what's the point? Like, why'd
Mhm.
you get it if you're going to try to hide it? Um, And so, yeah, I think that we're still working through it, right? And even people who come in or, she's like, "Oh, I didn't know we could have tattoos." And I think the idea about permission, right?
Right.
Is huge. And the reason what made me think about this is when I was in law school and I was working for the corporate law firm, I remember there was a legal secretary there and I was like, "Oh, I need to take a day off. I have to ask them for a day off." And she was like, "No." She's like, "You tell them you are taking this day off." She's like, "You're an adult." She was like, "You're not going to ask for permission to take a
Yes.
day off when you have them." And I was like, "Oh," she's like, "Never ask for permission." And I was like,
Yes.
understood. Like, thank you. She had been in the firm she was an older, legal secretary, had been in and out. She was like, "You don't ask for permission." And I was like,
Yeah.
very well.
That's the
That
most
was one
valuable
thing
piece of advice ever, especially in
that stuck
America.
with me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, the
Yeah.
the one theme, or I guess the thing that's resonating here with me that bubbles up through this whole conversation, and maybe it's because, well, it's freedom.
Mhm.
And I equate freedom with the ability to choose how I spend my time, who I spend it with, what I do, right? To have the choice. And to me, that is what the kind of independence that you help people find really helps them get. And, I wonder just what you could say about how we as women can help other women in our day to day and our communities move toward that a little bit more.
I love that. Yeah, independence for me is absolutely it's freedom, right? And for me so much more now, right? Because I've run very successful businesses, but I'm like I want time freedom. So how do I create a life where I have more time to spend with my daughter? She's 6, so she started kindergarten in the middle of the pandemic, which was very interesting, navigating it, but realizing that I want more time freedom.
Mhm.
And in regards to how do we support other women, I think there's still so much like cattiness and judgment around the way a woman lives her life, and I know in kind of coming up to our, in the lead up to our conversation, right? We talk about you asked about wealth, right? And
Mhm.
whether it is like, so it's funny because I just did a summit, I think it was the beginning of this year around, it was called Wealthy Her, right?
Mhm.
Play on the her again. But it was finances, it was health and wellness, it was legal, it was just your story and your legacy. And I think that there's just so much judgment around what other women, wish to do, right? And one of the things was right around sexuality.
Mhm.
It was, or even like femininity, right? It's like all of a sudden, if a woman is chooses to be, promiscuous, or, if an individual is part of the LGBT, Q community, um there's that judgment that's there, and it's like it's not your life. Like, what does it matter to you? And
Right.
so I think having like support and compassion for people who may be different from you, or for women specifically who may not be living the same type of life as you are, and just not judging them. And so I'm obviously right if they're doing harm to themselves, or there's something like, hey, be careful.
Right.
Supporting them in that way. But if they're living a life that is different from you, it doesn't make it right or wrong.
Yeah.
And supporting them in that life, because I'm sure that there's things where, I will do things in a different manner than you would approve of, or, or that you would do for yourself. And it's just, and I think of the meme that I always see. It's like, be a woman who adjusts someone else's or another woman's crown without like telling them about it. Right.
Right.
And it's just supporting them without needing like the validation, or like, oh, like I'm doing, it's that, like, just be supportive. If a woman wants to go and be promiscuous, let her. Like, that is her right. Like, she's tapping into her feminine energy that may have been suppressed for numerous years, generations, lifetimes. Let her do that. If she chooses to, be, I don't even know, if you're completely covered, or maybe she's Muslim and that's her religion, and she wants to be completely clothed, let her. Like, these are individual choices that we don't need to approve of.
Mhm.
And it's part of that thing too, right? In business, it's like, stay in your own lane, focus on what you're doing and how you want to live, right? And how you want to be remembered, or the ancestor that you want to be, and the impact that you're making, and not how somebody else is living their life. Because at the end of the day, right, when we pass, their life has nothing to do with us or ours or our legacy. So
Yeah, I love that. The other thing that this brings up for me is and this is all kind of tied to patriarchy, right? Like even the word promiscuous, who made up that word? Someone to oppress women.
yeah.
Um, and actually, like sidebar story. So I have a 13-year-old and she used the word slut the other day. And I was like, what context did you use that in? And she was like, I called myself a badass slut. And I was like, great. Okay. As long as you use it as in an empowering way that is not derogatory, good use of the word. Reclaim the power of that word for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, and I'm like, I don't know if we're allowed to swear, but
You
even
can
the
swear.
word, I was like, even the word bitch, right? Like, my friends and I will say it to each other, but that, like, when we say it to each other, it's because we're badass, powerful women,
Right.
not as the way in which it was intended, right? And it's funny because I think it was when I was in high school, I was like, I want to be a linguist. I want to know why people said the sky is blue, and why blue has to be blue, and why can't blue be green, and who decided this? Like, who said that this is what I had to use? Clearly, I was like, oh, that's, get off your, your soapbox and get back, get back to class and stop worrying about. But it's deeply rooted, right? Where, and I didn't think, when I was like 13, that I would come back to those same types of questions, but in a different way, right? Around promiscuous, slut, you
Yeah.
know, whore, bitch, like all of these words that get thrown at women for doing what men do, but they're like,
Right.
they're placed on a pedestal for it.
Right. So it's getting curious about, wait a minute, why would I use that word in that way? Or why am I having a reaction to that word? Right. And then kind of dissecting the origin of the word itself and reclaiming the power of it is, one way that we can step into our power further.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
oh gosh, what was I going to say? Oh, it was sometimes we think back to your idea too of just keeping ourselves small. Like sometimes we think too, as women, because we're trained this way, that opportunities are finite, that money is finite, and that if someone else has it, we can't have it. And that is absolutely not true, because yes, money is a resource. It's also energy. Wealth is energy. Opportunity is energy. And
It's
actually, there's a
infinite.
finite
It's
amount
infinite.
of
Yeah.
both things in the world.
Mhm.
So it doesn't pay to get in competition with others,
Mhm.
when everybody has, you know, not
Yeah.
everybody has the opportunity, but to work for those things in the way that they should, but we can help each other get there.
Absolutely. And, we're talking about, it's the scarcity mindset, right? And I'm sure that word gets thrown around a lot, but it's, it is realizing that there are multiple and infinite opportunities available for us to build wealth, to make money, and it doesn't need to look like the way everybody else is doing it. Some people, I remember when I first started the coaching, and I had so many like 9 to 5ers, right? Is what they were like, well, I like working my 9 to 5. And I was like, I'm happy for you. Like, I'm not saying a 9 to 5 is bad. I'm saying do what you love. And if
Right.
your 9 to 5 is in doing something that you love, then yes, keep going. And it was, and then I realized it wasn't about me, right? Or the message that I had. It was that individual projecting, well, you're saying and I'm like, I'm not saying 9 to 5 is bad. I'm saying if you don't like your 9 to 5, either find a new one that you love or start a business, right? I'm all for people starting business. I'm like, start a
Right.
business. I'll help you.
Yeah.
Um, and because, right, when you are self-employed and an entrepreneur, like the cap for income is like whatever you place on yourself at that point,
Mhm.
right? You can make as much. There's how many $1 million companies that are out there, and nobody else is worried about not, the next $1 million company.
Nope.
And it's like, do what you love and make money and live your life and just have fun doing it. And I think that, there are a lot of times, and I think about even within my own family, and even culturally, right, where I was the first to go to college. I have some cousins who followed after, right, like I helped them kind of navigate. But when I became a lawyer, because I'm the only one in my family, it was like, oh, she thinks her shit doesn't stink anymore. Like she thinks that she's better than her. And I'm like, I am the most down to earth person. Like I will still go to like Dollar Tree and get my movie candy until like I die, right? Like I'm like, I'm not that person. Like I'm like, how can I help you get to where I'm at and then give you a push, right? To
Right.
keep going. And I for a long time it was, even when I was little, like it's the don't be too big, don't do too much, don't draw attention to yourself because they already think you like are stuck up. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, so let's not be stuck up. I'm like, I was never stuck up. However, after doing a lot of inner work, I realized there are things about me that not necessarily that demand attention, right? Like that is just the energy. I was like, that is just
Yeah.
the energy that I emit unintentionally. Like this is how God created me, and I'm not doing it for any reason other than this is what feels right. I was thinking about when I was younger, and it was my brother's birthday, and I was like, everybody has to sing happy birthday to me, like because I said so, right? And everybody sang happy birthday to me, and I was like, I think I was probably 5 or 6. Nobody, and I was like, okay, it's funny, and the only reason I know that is because my parents had a picture of my brother standing next to me while I'm blowing out his birthday candles that says his name on the cake, and then I realized, the hoops, right, or like the way that I dress or my hot pink lipstick, and I love faux furs, right? I have multiple pictures. Like my daughter is definitely a mini me, right? And so I see the energy that I am in her as well. And
Mhm.
I'm at the point where who cares? Like that's where you get to, right? It's like, and my wish is that all women get to that point. And women may not be as, loud and stand outish, and that's okay too. But it's like, I want women to get to a space where they can be themselves, whatever that is, right? Maybe they're quote unquote, right? A nerd, right? Where they just like read books all day. And I was like, but I was that too. Like there
Mhm.
were moments, right, where I don't want to deal with people. Like I just want to be
Oh
in
yeah,
my own
we'd be
little,
there.
you know, and that's okay. And there's no right or wrong way to be. And I think that that's the biggest lesson for women everywhere is there's no right or wrong way to be who you are, whether that's like this big, bold, like outspoken person, or a very introverted, like stays to themselves, but is enjoying their life and gardening or whatever it is, go for a bike ride, whatever it is that you do, right? Because I mean, and that's just it, right? There's no right or wrong. And I think that's the
Mhm.
biggest thing. And as women, we need to support other women just because we're already, and I don't like to say we are up against the, there's a patriarchy that we have to battle. Like for whatever reason, I don't like that word, but it's true. Like it is what it is. And we're up against this like bigger being that, is trying to suppress us, has suppressed us, we've, for so many years. And just basically stepping up and getting equal treatment, right? And that's whether it's, any marginalized community essentially or group
Mhm.
of people.
Well, I love the word battle, especially when it has to do with the patriarchy.
Yeah.
So I'll hold that mantle. And the more that we can embody ourselves, the more permission other people have to do it. And that's when everybody gets more powerful. So hopefully
Yeah.
people will come along with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love the word battle. Don't get me wrong. It's patriarchy. And I don't know if it's
Oh,
because so many people have thrown it around that it just gives me like an ick feeling. But yes, we are up to battle something large. And day by day, second by second, we are like smashing it.
yes, smashing it. Well, I want everybody to know where they can find you. So tell us website, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is.
Yeah. So best way to reach me is carmenrosas.com. So just first name, last name.com. And that will get you to both Empower Yourself and my law practice, which is Carmen Rosas Law. But that website and on Instagram. So on Instagram, it's I am Carmen Rosas. And I think on Facebook, those are my personal kind of, quote unquote personal, but those are my personal. And then your legacy protection firm is the estate planning and making sure you get those legal documents in place, because it is beautiful for all of us to, go out and do the work that we do and live the lives and create the legacy. And not that it won't go to waste if you don't have the documents, but they're super important to help ease into, the next part of your journey.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Everybody go check out Carmen. Carmen, thank you so much for being here today. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you so, so much.